Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have some special guests with us. We actually have two of them, Lynnae and Garth Allred. We're super excited to have them on the show, and they are going to teach us from a different perspective that maybe we haven't looked at quite in this way before. So I'm really excited to have you guys on the show. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself.
My name is Lynnae, and I am a full-time professional grandmother. If anybody asks me, that's what my current job is, and it is a really great job. I worked most of the time as a full-time stay-at-home mom in our growing up years, and then for part of the time, I was employed full-time as an acquisitions editor for a publishing company. But I love writing, I love books, I love new ideas, I love being curious, and I love my family.
Yeah, we've been married 38 years. And have 5 children, 11 grandchildren. The children came early for us in our early married years, and it's great. We're both retired now and have more time than we thought we would have to spend on things that really matter to us. Professionally, I've been a controller for many years, as well as a business owner for many years. Yeah.
I can't help but be a little bit envious. I'm sure any parent with lots of kids at home, what would that be like? Like, I cannot even imagine. But then every grandparent that I talk to or empty nester says, oh, you are going to miss it. And I think, will I miss the chaos? I'm sure I will. But I love hearing other perspectives. This is wonderful to have you on the show. So thank you again for coming. But I was curious if I could jump in and ask you some questions about your experience that would resonate with our listeners today.
Certainly.
Okay, so the first one I have for you is, what is the best part about being an empty nester that parents with kids at home can look forward to?
I'll let Garth start because he has some fun ideas about this, being a really recent retiree.
Yeah, the obvious answer is additional free time. When the children move out, all the time you spent caring for them and attending their events and activities is now free to you. So a lot of evening and weekend times, and in our case, all day times as well, that we can spend on other things that we enjoy doing or things we put off until this stage of life. And some things you thought you would be really interested in at this stage of life, you don't have an interest when you reach this stage of life. So it's interesting how that all works. But, the one thing that really stood out to me as the children left home is that the relationship Lynnae and I have for each other in our marriage was laid open to us and exposed, showing us how strong it really is or what areas we can improve upon. All marriage can be improved upon, but now you have time to focus on it to make it better, such as connecting with your spouse in new ways that might make your marriage more joyful, more stable, more permanent, and be a bigger priority in your life.
I love how you take this positive spin on that, because I know a lot of, I'm a therapist, so a lot of clients come and they talk about how it can be really challenging to suddenly be an empty nester and to undergo such a big change. And then suddenly it's just you and your spouse that you're focusing on. And that can be both good and bad sometimes. And I'm sure you're going to speak to that, but that positive spin that you're doing, I love that. And 38 years is pretty significant. I'm sure you have a lot you could teach us.
I was surprised in that it seemed to be even harder on Garth as we became empty nesters to watch the children leave than it was for me. That really surprised me. I think it was just because he allowed himself to be really open about the things he was feeling about it. And there were tears and there was mourning. It's truly a time of grieving because we had worked so hard on connecting, creating those connections and building those bonds of trust for all those years. And so you feel like there's this instant severance when children go off and they begin to form families of their own. And now their first priority is their spouse and their children. And we're not necessarily in the mix any longer. And so being able to let go just a little bit and let them move on with their lives and be happy, and then not staying in that grieving stage forever, but allowing ourselves to go, okay, we took some time to feel really sad about it, but now let's figure out what it is that's left in our basket of joy that we can go and really embrace. And I think what we learned is that we had left a lot of joy on the table in our companionship because we had focused so heavily on our family. We left each other out of the mix. And so the beautiful thing about it for us was starting to reinvent what Garth and Lynnae as a couple looked like. It's been hard, but it's been a lot of fun. I think we have obviously more time and more cash. So it's like being newlyweds again, but we find ourselves being a lot more spontaneous than we used to be. And it's a shock to our children. We'll send them a video. Hey guys, look, Dad and I decorated the porch for Halloween and he put this remote control spider out there. And we spent the whole night watching kids through the doorbell camera as he scared people on the porch. Or, hey, here's our pictures from our cruise that we took without you. We've got a bunch of empty nester friends together. We went on a cruise and we're having a great time. So there's just so much fun and so much joy out there to be gathered and held and embraced. And I think it's okay to grieve too. It's a big separation of something that was really important to us.
I appreciate you guys being vulnerable about what it really is. I love talking to people in that next stage to prepare for what we can do right now to improve that situation so that we're not, like you mentioned already, like you gave so much to your kids and didn't leave as much for one another. And I feel that resonates. I'm sure. I know it does with me. So what can you do to improve that situation? And I'm sure we'll get even more to that. Actually, that goes in with my next question. What can young parents do to enjoy this current stage more fully? I know that's a loaded question, but what comes up for you guys?
I think for me, I had an older woman when I was in the throes of the diaper stage with little toddlers at home who was watching me one day and she said, "Oh, Lynnae, don't wish away these days." And it was like a slap in the face. I realized, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm feeling so hopeful about the future coming when I'm not sleep deprived and I do have 2 minutes to myself again and they are in school and I can go back to having some of my hobbies. But what I realized when she said that to me was that she was exactly right. I was missing the present moment because I was so busy casting forward into the future and looking for what could possibly come. I was missing what was in the moment. And I still struggle with this even as a grandmother now, slowing my life down long enough to really savor what's happening right now in front of me. And when I can give myself space to do that, I find the right now in front of me is so beautiful. Like the smell of the can of peaches I opened for lunch, or pushing the grandchildren on the swing and just looking at the sunlight in their hair. Like moments of savoring are so easy to find if you give yourself time to watch them.
I was actually just creating a course about this. You said pretty much the exact same things. I was just talking about like savoring the moment, right? What's right in front of you. And that's so easy to say when you're not cleaning up Cheerios on the floor, running kids to appointments, going to the next place, trying to be 3 places at once. And yet it's true. And even in your current stage, you mentioned that's still a problem. What about you, Garth?
We had a rule in our home that every child would learn a musical instrument. Music was pretty important to us, and that meant practicing and recitals. And then they wanted to play sports, and then they wanted to dance, and then they wanted to do all kinds of things and explore the world. And so if we had to do it over again, we wouldn't over-program our children's time as much, and we would enjoy the time that we were with our children and just take it one day at a time. We created traditions that lasted from year to year. We went on vacations that were pretty important to us, and those are times that our children still reflect back upon and they're trying to do in their own families now. So just making time for each other, I think, is probably the most important thing.
No, I love that. And that kind of strikes a chord within me. We have 4, sometimes 5 with exchange students. And I think we definitely overprogram, overschedule sometimes, not on purpose, but even if just every kid is in one thing, developing those talents and dance and music and sports, you do realize that your life is more rushed than you want it to be. And how many of them are going to go on and keep doing these things after high school? I don't know. Time will tell us. So definitely.
If our family is any indication, not any of them. Not any of them went into a full-time career that had anything to do with the extracurricular things that we had them involved in as children. I think one thing that the extracurriculars did help with is helping them learn new languages, so to speak. The language of music, the language of athletics, the language of how to draw, the language of how to connect with other people. And that's been helpful for them. So I think if you approach it in terms of what are the languages that we want them to learn, what languages do they want to learn, and really back off from the idea of we have to have them do this so they get a college scholarship and can become a professional at such and such a thing. I think being realistic about the purpose of these kinds of outside of the family experiences are to give them experiences and nothing more. They already are worthy and complete and enough, and they will build their own future.
Yeah, I love that. And definitely something to keep in mind and not worrying so much about those things and reevaluating like what really is important. What do they want to do? Scaling back, not being afraid to do that. I do think it builds a lot of confidence. Like I actually grew up the other way. I don't know how you guys grew up. I wasn't in many things and I mourned at that. So I think I'm trying to make up for that in my own children. But then I think you can overcompensate sometimes too. My next question for you is, what are 2 important lessons that you've learned just since becoming a grandparent that have changed the way that you live your life and maybe how that could help our audience as well?
Well, for me, our children and our grandchildren, they're in their own families. And oftentimes our children will call up and say, hey, do you want to come down and watch a soccer game? Or do you want to go to this school play? And if our attitude is, I've got other things I've planned on doing, you'll never go. And so for me, it's taking the time to clear my schedule and be responsive to their requests, because it's important to me to develop relationships with grandchildren. And you can't do that unless you spend time with them. And so it's never convenient, really, when they ask you to participate and come and join. And the other thing is, you can't really invite yourself. You have to wait to be invited to join the family and to see the grandkids and enjoy them. And so whenever they invite us, we say we'll be there.
I really appreciate that. I think that in that stage, I won't be busy, and so it wouldn't be as inconvenient, but like you're always choosing in every stage what you're going to make a priority. And it sounds like you're still choosing family, but in a different way than you ever had before, like maybe just because of everything that's going on for you. Did you have any, Matt, Lynnae?
I think probably the most significant thing I've learned since becoming a grandmother, and it actually took therapy to help me learn this, that there is a concept, it's the concept of sufficiency. And we're people of faith. And so this therapist talked to me about my religious beliefs and my Christian beliefs, and pointed out, like, Jesus Christ didn't ever hurry. We don't have evidence from what he wrote about that he was ever in a rush or that he ever packed his schedule full. And so what he does use often to describe his work is the word sufficient. And so he asked me to look at my own life and figure out how often I was overcompensating as a people pleaser or for whatever, because I wanted things to be special. I wanted people to know I loved them. So I was making things special. Often was going to a lot of extra effort and work that was unnecessary. And as a really quick example, Garth had a significant health crisis in December, just about the time we were trying to get Christmas ready. And one of my daughters came and said, why don't you just let go of Christmas dinner? Why don't you just not? And it was super difficult for me. I just thought, no, like that's how I gather everybody. This is important to me. And what is the piece of it that's important to you? And I said, the connecting with people, the relationships, the conversations. And she said, you can do all of that without a beautiful tablescape. So bless her soul, she said, we're going to cater dinner and I will do the tablescape for you. I'll make it lovely so you don't have to worry about it. You can still have the pretty table, but try it and see what it's like to just let go of all the fluff and go after the meat of what really matters. That was a really precious evening. So I'm so grateful for learning those kinds of things. What was sufficient was we had some warmed up lasagna from a local restaurant and we had time to talk to each other. It was beautiful.
And you said your daughter said this too?
My children are wise old souls. And yes, one of my daughters was the one to say, it's okay to slow down and let go of this.
That says a lot also. She's your daughter, and I'm sure some of what you have taught her, or both of you, has rubbed off on her, let's hope. But either way, I think those are beautiful things that you just spoke to there. That Jesus didn't hurry. It's sufficient. I think there's so much to be said in that. I think an entire podcast episode could just be on that. And then are you overcompensating, or is that extra work necessary? And again, those two questions, that definitely speaks to the stage that our listeners are in. And I feel truly, probably this applies to every stage, right? But especially the busyness of this stage, that extra work, it is so hard as a parent to let go sometimes. And like you just said, you had to really learn to let go, even in your stage of what was going on. I feel like I could tell myself that every day. So I'm really grateful that you shared that.
One of the reasons it's so hard to let go of is because our culture and our society, like we're doers and strivers. This is the great American way. And the Olympic swifter, higher, faster thing is just how we all live. And I'm not calling that out as a terrible thing. I think there are lots of times in my life when I did strive for something that I'm grateful for. But I'm also learning that the striving piece is not always necessary. And if we're always in that mode, we never leave moments for stillness. We never leave moments for connection. And they are also critical.
Oh, absolutely. That actually goes into my next question very well, too. So can you share some lessons that you've learned about just like what you were talking about, that connection and that emotional intimacy since becoming an empty nester?
I think Garth has the best answers to this question.
Having an emotional connection with your spouse, I think, is probably the primary differentiator between feeling like you're a couple or feeling like roommates, talking with each other, being vulnerable in that communication, sharing everything. And I've learned that you can't assume that you know what they're thinking by watching the expression on their face or seeing their body language. And I've been in therapy for several years now, and some of it has been with Lynnae joining me. I've had a lot of childhood trauma, and those memories started to surface a few years back and continue, especially after being retired. They've just come full bore. And so it's been a challenge for me to connect emotionally, and it's affected my ability to do that with Lynnae. And that's what the therapist has really worked with me on, is how to be vulnerable and how to dare her to be vulnerable in talking and getting issues discussed between us. As naturally for me, I would want to sometimes pull away and become distant from Lynnae. And that is how I'm saying to her, I'm in pain. I need your help, rather than just verbally talking to her, because that would require being vulnerable. And pulling away is the polar opposite of what you really want to do. So it's a work in progress.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable in that way, because I feel like so many people feel that, but they don't express it. And so we don't know that this is like a normal part of the human experience, and we don't know what to do about it. Like often in a relationship, I see this pretty frequently, like one of them really struggles with that emotional intimacy and that vulnerability. And then the other one's frustrated. And now the other one has other issues that they're working through as well. It can be a massive barrier. And it sounds like you are addressing it now, but maybe because of the chaos of life or whatever, it just got put on a back burner for a while. And now you're coming face to face with that, right?
Exactly. And the chaos of life over the time our children were with us and how busy we were with them, it prevented memories from coming forward even. And so now that there's free time and some idle time at times, it's really an opportunity to heal and work on that connection with Lynnae, especially the emotional connection that she desires so much.
I will just say that, yes, it's been a little bit life-changing to see him start to really open up. I thought I knew him really well. I knew him better than anybody else on the planet. But what I have come to realize is that he has held back such significant pieces of himself out of fear or anxiety or feeling like he wouldn't measure up, or people, if we knew who he really is, we wouldn't like him anymore. I think we all feel like that on some level. I think I've felt that way a lot of the time. But having him be willing to trust me to hold that imperfect version of him in my heart and show him that I love it just as much. I love him more when I can see all the beautiful pieces of him in all their messiness. And now I'm comfortable sharing some of my messiness with him as well. And I think that's helping us forge a little bit safer, more joyful companionship.
That's so beautiful. And I'm thinking about our listeners and myself, even personally, like, I don't know if you know this, but my husband's also a therapist, and sometimes feel that pressure, like we're both therapists. We should have it all together. And like any marriage, my husband just yesterday, I think, said to me, did you ever think marriage would be so hard? And I said, no, I don't think I did. I think I knew parenting would be harder, but I thought that if you just love somebody, it's just going to be pretty easy. And it's definitely the refiner's fire in so many ways. 38 years is remarkable. And we're at about 20 years, and we are learning a lot all the time about everything, I suppose, but mostly just patience and respecting the other's pace and their journey and just having more grace, I think. And I love how you speak to that as well, like how every stage is so different. I feel like we haven't even got to a small part of all the things that you could teach. So I have several questions that I could ask you, but I'm going to shelf those if that's okay. And I'm just going to open out up to you guys. Like, what would you like to share with us most that you feel would benefit parents, whether they have young children or older children that are just seeking to find more connection or enjoy the stage they're at more? What would you like to share with us before we end today?
For me, it's this idea of showing unconditional love to a child or to grandchildren. Your children aren't in your sphere of influence on a daily basis, and as they're married and have their own families, and they really probably don't even want your advice unless they ask for it. And if sometimes it's in front of me and Lynnae, if a child gets disciplined and the parents are angry at them for what they did, as grandparents, we can't be angry with them, but we just need to show our love for them in all stages. And as they grow up older and become teenagers, and they know that they can talk to grandma or grandpa and that they will be loved and accepted and not judged, and that we're always there for them, I think that plays a big role in their lives. So that's what I would look to.
I love that. It reminded me of something that just happened yesterday, actually. Just that love and acceptance. I think as a mother, often when I'm inviting grandparents over to do things with the kids, all I want is those memory makers, things that my kids can treasure. And we were looking through old pictures yesterday, and we came across one of my niece and my daughter. They had their American Girl dolls, and it was with my aunt, so their great aunt. And they talked about how it was one of the best memories ever. They had this big, fabulous day. I think it was like a spa day, but they both had their dolls. They were all matching in their outfits with their dolls. It was just this very beautiful time, but they speak of it so glowingly 10 to 15 years later. And that's what we want as parents, those opportunities to just, for the kids to light up as they share them. But I love how you just talked about how you can just loving them and accepting them. You didn't say it in exactly this way, Garth, but I'm looking for clarification here. It is not so much as disciplining them or parenting them, but just be there with that tenderness, that love, that acceptance. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
I love that. Beautiful. What about you, Lynnae?
I'm quick to give advice. So what's the one thing I would want anybody out there to know? What's the thing that is making my life beautiful right now? And I think it might be something like coming to an awareness. And I think actually this awareness has come to me through my personal history work, where I do oral history interviewing for people in the older generation. And I ask them about their lives. And it's really often that they're super hesitant to tell me the stories about challenges they've faced or mistakes that they have made. And I've gotten to the point where after I've developed a little bit of a relationship with somebody, I go for that jugular. Like I go for, okay, what is your most significant regret in life? What's the biggest mistake you've ever made? Because in unburdening themselves from those kinds of mistakes, they are actually passing on to the future generations a hope, like a sense of, I really messed up, or my life got really messy in this way, and it's still all worked out for me. And I think sitting in these rooms and listening to these stories with these people who are extremely wise in terms of life experience, over and over again, what comes out of that is that the moments when they struggled the most, those were the most redemptive moments. Those were the moments when the family gathered around them and supported them, or those were the moments when somebody showed a little bit of compassion and love in an unexpected way, offered them some grace in an unexpected way, grace that they didn't deserve or they hadn't earned. And those moments become so redemptive and so refining that they remember them for years and years and tell those stories later on. And I think it's the telling of those kinds of stories that gives our grandchildren an opportunity to look back at our lives and look back at the legacy, because they have the bigger picture of who we were to them. My grandma was the fun grandma, or my grandpa was the one that always took us out for ice cream. Oh, I didn't know he also made mistakes when he was in high school. And if he made mistakes in high school and still ended up being the grandpa that I loved so much, then it's okay if I make a couple of mistakes too. And I think that's something that as I age into the wise version of myself, I'm really hoping that I'm taking in enough of these kinds of experiences, and instead of being judgmental about them or assigning meaning or anything like that, that I just allow the fact that those stories happen and that they will have value. I will understand at some point, and I'll be able to look back at some point and go, that's what I learned from that experience. And I think that's what I want to share. Your stories have meaning. They change who you are, and facing them head on is actually really healthy and helpful for you. So let your stories out. Share the ones you can, and the ones that you can't, still write about them and think about if the version of the story that you told yourself when you were a high school senior is still the same now that you're in your 70s.
That is beautiful advice. It makes me think about, like, I often encourage people to write in their journals. My great grandma, a beautiful, wonderful woman, but she would often write things in her journal about what she did that day and how she got a permanent. I didn't even know what that was until my mom told me it was a perm. But I didn't get to know her, and I wish I would have known about her struggles, just like you spoke to. Like, it normalizes like that human experience, and it helps us recognize like we're not alone. And especially when a loved one or an ancestor talks about those same things, I wish I had more of those stories to go on, and maybe I just need to dig a little bit more. But I really appreciate how you said that it leaves hope, that the redemptive thing, that compassion, that grace, and that your stories have meaning. So let your stories out. I almost feel like I should have started this whole thing then with what is your most significant regret? And maybe next time go right for the jugular, right? But that is a beautiful place to end. I really appreciate you guys being on and sharing. Time always goes so quickly, but just being able to hear a different perspective from a different stage of life, like how we can approach it and how we can maybe be a little more successful and lean in and be more vulnerable. Like, you guys spoke to a lot of things here. I'm trying to think of all the little nuggets that I appreciated a lot, but I think just let go of some of those things. Are we overcompensating? Have that love and that acceptance, and share your stories and be willing to be open and vulnerable. I think those are some of my favorite things that you guys spoke to. Again, I appreciate you coming on and the wisdom that you taught us. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.